So hello everyone, my name is Dustin Childs. I'm with the Trend Micro Zero Day Initiative. A little bit about me and kind of my background so you get an idea of where I'm coming from. Way back in 1997, the Air Force actually assigned me to the unit to catch hackers. So I became a part of the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team in the Information Warfare Center. After that, in about 2008, I went to Microsoft and patched everything as part of the MSRC. We do Update Tuesday, as they call it, or Patch Tuesday, as everyone else calls it. So there's a pretty good chance I rebooted your computer at some point, so sorry about that. I handled such cases like Conficker, if you've ever heard of that one, that was my case. I also handled some of the Stuxnet's bugs, so a lot of interesting things there. And then in 2015, I decided it was a lot easier buying bugs than it was fixing them, so I joined the Zero Day Initiative. We are the world's largest vendor-agnostic bug bounty program, and we'll get into kind of what that means. But today I wanted to talk to you about the marketplace for bugs. We've all dealt with security bugs at some point in our career, even if we're not a security expert. But not a lot of folks understand that there's a marketplace where these are bought and sold and traded. And researchers have actually a lot of options when it comes to what they do with their research. And if they find a security bug, how they can monetize that bug, whether it be on the legal markets, whether it be somewhere in between in like a vulnerability broker or government sales, or whether they go to the illicit black market and the criminal element. So let's take a look at what those options are and some of the money that changes hands. So it starts with researchers finding bugs. So I have a couple researchers there because researchers tend to talk amongst themselves, which is something that we could learn from sharing information. So they're sharing information, they're finding bugs, and they're selling that bug report to a bug bounty program, or in some cases, they're selling it directly to a vendor. These bug reports can go from as little as $150 up to 25,000 plus on this side. They can actually go higher than that for some really, really big bugs, but this is generally the range that they keep at. Now, for a vendor agnostic program, what do we do with the bugs? Well, we're going to take that information, use that exploit intelligence to bolster our own products and release virtual patches. Obviously, the vendor is going to take that information and release their own patch. Notice I have an asterisk there. When you buy a bug in this manner, most people don't realize what you're actually doing is you're purchasing intellectual property. The intellectual property of how to do that use after free or exploit that Ubright, whatever it is. As a vendor, once you purchase that intellectual property, there's nothing that says you actually have to fix the bug. And there's been many cases where vendors have bought bugs and just sat on them because they were too hard to fix or whatever. And that's one reason why independent programs like ours exist, because if you don't fix it, there become consequences such as 0 days. So anyway, that's this marketplace, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But you have alternatives. So you can go directly, like I said, you could sell to an exploit writer, you could sell to a government, or you could sell to a vulnerability broker. And there's various legalities of all of these. So when I'm selling to an exploit broker, obviously I'm looking at, you can see the numbers are much higher there. You're looking at over $1 million for zero-click attacks, meaning if I can take over an Android phone right now with 0 clicks, I think the going rate on the open market is $2.5 million. I can't do that, by the way. I'd get that 2.5 mil. But then the business model, you have to ask yourself, well, how are they making their money? And they're making their money by reselling it. And when you're spending millions of dollars on bugs, who are you reselling it to? You're reselling it to governments. And then the question becomes, well, what are they doing with the bugs? If you're on hopefully they're using it to fight crime and stop terrorism, but you could also argue that they could be using it to exploit their own people or whatever. So some people have problems with their research being used in this format. Other people have bills and just want the dollar bills, y'all. So I make no judgments there. But then you sell to an exploit writer, and you're not going to get as much money this way, but you can still get a lot of money tax-free in this case, as long as you don't get caught. But how are they making their money? Well, they're going to resell that exploit to a botnet creator who's going to compromise a bunch of PCs or these days IoT devices. They're going to rent that botnet out to a bot herder, and of course they are going to further rent it out to the DDoS extortion, the credential harvesting, the spammers, the ransomware folks. The credential harvester is going to sell the credentials depending on what they are, between $5 and $50, depending on how good it is, to a smart criminal who's going to make one big purchase. Then that criminal is going to resell to a dumb criminal who's going to buy chips and beer. And we'll get back to that guy. Now, this part is completely legal. And I have an asterisk there because there are some, things that you need to consider. The first is this thing called the Wasanar arrangement. And it was introduced a few years ago. Initially, people thought it was going to completely shut down bug bounties and the sale of bugs and everything else. Really, the highlighted countries there, it just means additional paperwork is involved when you are transferring that intellectual property of a security bug across those specific borders. We've worked with lawyers over the years and have gotten that paperwork down pretty well. When you're reporting directly to a vendor, who's involved? Well, these days, just about everyone. I put Mozilla top left there because they're credited with the first vendor bug bounty program way back in 2004. But pretty much everyone does it these days, including companies that you wouldn't think that offer alternatives to just cash. United Airlines, for example, awards miles. When their program was first created, it took them about a week to award somebody 1 million miles. That's pretty cool. I don't know what GM gives you if you get cars or parts or stuff like that. But Google started theirs, very successful. Microsoft initially started theirs in 2013, focusing only on beta products. They've expanded it greatly since then. Apple supposedly has a bug bounty program. It's invite only, however, and I can count on one hand the number of people I know who've actually gotten paid from it. So various successes. I mentioned vendor agnostic programs, including the Trend Micro Zero Day Initiative. That's us. We also run Pwn to Own, the contest, if you've ever heard of that. We're not the only one. Accenture iDefense has actually been around longer than ZDI, but they focus more on threat intelligence than vulnerability acquisition. And then the Beyond Security, Secure Team, Secure Disclosure. I swear that's their name. They're vendor agnostic, but they have a limited set of things that they buy. What does vendor agnostic mean? Really just means that we buy bugs in a lot of different products. I buy bugs in Apple, I buy bugs in Microsoft, Google, Cisco, IBM, Dell, Parallels Desktop, Oracle, you name it. We're buying bugs in those types of products. Obviously, a vendor is only going to buy their own bugs. Recently, this bug bounty as a service has come into play. BugCrowd, HackerOne, and Synac. And really, like, for example, HBO is a customer of HackerOne. HBO doesn't know how to run a bug bounty program, so they contracted out to HackerOne to run that. And I, as a vendor agnostic program, don't really care about cross-site scripting bugs at hbomax.com or whatever. I'm glad they do, so that's how they get those fixed. Moving on to this section, this is the mostly legal area, and here's what I mean by mostly legal. Going back into this gray market sales, for example, if I were to sell a bug to my own government, they would be okay with that. However, if I sell bugs to other governments, that's when they start asking questions and I have the possibility of getting banned. And if you're not familiar with that term, it means men in black show up, throw you in a van, and you're gone forever. But who are we talking about here? Really, there's three big players in the vulnerability broker landscape: Exodus, Zerodium. CrowdFence kind of is up and down, but Zerodium's really the big player. They're the ones that are setting the biggest dollar signs publicly, saying this is what we're doing. Recently, they said, hey, we're looking for WordPress exploits. We normally pay $100,000. For a temporary time, we're paying $300,000. Now, again, why would you do that? Well, somebody, most likely a government, is asking specifically for WordPress exploits. So that's what they do. There's also Exploit Hub, and Kevin Mitnick has his zero-day exchange, which are still out there, but maybe not as all functioning. But really, when it comes down to it, you're talking about dealing with the government agencies somehow. And the question has been posed to me, like, well, which governments are involved in this? And the answer is any government that has an intelligence apparatus is involved in this. They're either buying bugs, or they're subscribing to these services, or they're attempting to create their own bugs. Obviously, whether it's one of the big countries that are in cyber, such as Russia or the US or Israel, they're doing their own things, but they're also subscribing to this. For a smaller country, if you want some O-days, you've got to go through a service like this, unless you just happen to have some brilliant folks on staff. But now let's get back to this section. And this is definitely not legal. But again, I have the asterisk. Like, how can anyone say that this is possibly legal? Well, no one's saying this is legal, but show me the word ransomware in litigation. and there isn't a lot. So that's one of the reasons why I say, well, this is not legal to a point. Some of these things are not covered very well by existing laws, especially when you get into certain areas of the world where the existing laws just aren't keeping up with technology. So you have that. And then recently we found that certain ransomware outfits are kind of tolerated by local governments, provided that the ransomware doesn't affect the local populace. So you'll see ransomware that actually has language checks before it actually detonates to make sure that it's not operating, to help it make sure that it's not operating in its home country, essentially. So there's that as well. Otherwise, yes, this is illegal. No one's going to try and say, oh no, spam is just fine. Everyone knows that's not good. So this person, the dumb person buying beer and chips, they get caught quite often, and they've been getting caught for a while. Spammers get caught quite a bit as well, just because no one likes the spammers. So, we can all band together and drop a dime on them, whatever. We're getting much, much better at catching these smart criminals who are making one big purchase. To give you an example of that, I'll tell you personally, my kid's a sneakerhead. I have a teenage son. He's a sneakerhead. He was going to buy these Yeezys. Long story short, it was going to be easier for me to use my credit card on it. Chase immediately flagged that as suspicious because Dustin Childs does not buy Yeezys, but makes it a little easier. These folks, however, rarely get caught. And when they do get caught, it makes news. Even when they go away for a while, it makes news. And the example of that is the REvil, however you pronounce that, ransomware gang. They had a lot of success. They said, we're going away on vacation to the Crimea, and now they're back. Just them going away and coming back has made the news. So there's that. So this is, okay, that's neat, but I don't buy bugs. I don't sell bugs. I don't care. How does this affect me? Well, it does affect you even if you don't buy or sell bugs. The most obvious is through security patches. If you've installed a security patch sometime in the last year, there's a very good chance that that was either purchased by a bug bounty program or submitted through one. Excuse me. We published over 1,400 advisories last year. Most of those resulted in a security patch. And that's just our program alone. Obviously, Microsoft is buying bugs and releasing patches every second Tuesday. Adobe is buying bugs and releasing patches every second Tuesday. Cisco's buying bugs and releasing patches when they do. Oracle's releasing patches 4 times a year. A lot of those come through our program. A lot of them, they've bought their own. So that's the most apparent way that bug bounty programs affect you. The other way that most people don't realize is we can use bug bounty programs to guide and influence research. For example, I gave you the example of the WordPress from Zerodium that they upped the price on it. If you increase the price, if you offer a lot of money for a bug in a particular product, chances are people are going to look at that product in great detail trying to find the bug. Excuse me, I've got a little allergy thing here. It's just pollen, not plague, so I promise. It turns out that money is a highly motivating factor when it comes to independent security researchers finding and reporting bugs. It's not the only factor. There are definitely other things in play, but money is a big thing. So if we want to encourage people to find bugs in, say, virtual machines, then we include that as in a category to our Pwned contest that we hold in spring. We did that a few years ago, and now we see today a lot of bugs coming in virtual machines, whether it's VMware or VirtualBox or Parallels or whatever, what have you. So that's a way we can guide and influence research. And it makes a lot of sense that it's using our money to kind of help shape what's coming in. You can also use it to predict trends in attacks and exploits. So if you go to our webpage and you look at the upcoming, that shows all of the bugs that we've reported to vendors that have yet to be patched. So just looking at that, you can go, oh, well, there's a whole lot of Adobe bugs right there. There's a pretty good chance we're going to see some Adobe attacks in the near future. We're just watching what bugs are being purchased. For example, we saw some bugs being purchased and submitted in the Windows print spooler. Those print spooler bugs kept growing and growing and growing until we got to a point where we had Print Nightmare. So that's one of those things where if you're paying attention to what's being patched and what's coming through these bounty programs, you can actually kind of see ahead to where the next big problem might be. And really, that's where we kind of want to get with a lot of this stuff, is we don't want to be reactive as much as we want to be predictive. And it's very difficult to do. But if you can find those trends and say, hey, look at this. I haven't seen a bug in this for a while. Is when a bug gets patched that shines a huge spotlight on it, and people look around for any variant that might have gotten missed. And it turns out there's a lot of variants and a lot of different types of bugs. So with that, I'll say, hey, check us out. We're online. I publish a lot of blogs, including I published one today covering Parallels Desktop. So please take a minute, and I will be hanging around if I don't see any questions right now. But if there are questions, I will be happy to answer them. If you have any questions about the exploit economy or bug bounty programs in general, I'd love to talk to you. And if not, I'll see you online. And thank you, Ron, for having us. And I'll turn it back over to you.